It's such an honor to be here, and thank you very much to the organizers for the invitation. I've been listening to the sessions off and on since this morning, and also this afternoon. It just amazes you every time you listen to presentations from rare disease that there is so much work that needs to be done, and I feel honored to be part of this community because me and my team, we work in data, right? So we help with data-driven decisions. We help with designing clinical trials, finding the right patient population, finding the right assets that we should be testing for a variety of diseases and disorders, including some of the ones that I'm going to mention today. I also have the honor of kind of looking ahead and thinking about innovation, right? So what do we need? We heard a lot of challenges today. There's a lot of siloed data. It's a resource-constrained environment. It might be difficult to bring, and Tam's presentation about clinical trials, right? And how do you do we need to bring people with debilitating rare disease into academic medical centers, or are there other ways for us to collect this data, et cetera? So I want to, we also look ahead into that innovation, and I want to share some of those experiences with you.
You can use the
Perfect.
mouse
I can use
too.
the mouse. Yeah. Sounds good. Sounds good. Perfect. So just to kind of lead into this, our reach at Pfizer is about 1.3 billion patients worldwide. And this is more than 1 in every 6 people on Earth are touched by our medicines and vaccines. The only reason for me to say that is because of the reach and the network that's possible with a community like this. I talk to scientists every day at Pfizer who are hungry for collaborations with networks such as the Indo-US Rare Disease Summit. We focus in these 5 different therapy areas: oncology, internal medicine, vaccines, inflammation and immunology, and anti-infectives. Many of these, people, actually, I've worked my entire life in oncology, and people kind of tend to think of oncology differently from rare diseases. If you actually look at some of the cancers, some of the advanced metastatic cancers, they're actually rare diseases because they impact very few number of people. So take, for example, certain types of pancreatic cancers. They could be considered as rare disease. And so the same challenges and resource-constrained environment that we have been focusing on all day today applies to some of the oncology use cases as well. So our responsibility is, of course, product innovation. We want to bring the best drugs, breakthrough medications to patients, equitable access and pricing. And this is something that I've been learning after. So I have to say, just Harsha mentioned, I was a long-time academic, right? So for 10 years, I was at the Georgetown University Cancer Center, and then the pandemic happened. And I started asking myself, how do I, translate all that academic innovation and knowledge to helping patients? And that's when I moved to industry. And I've been learning a lot about large companies like Pfizer and AstraZeneca, what they do in terms of equitable access and pricing. And it's especially important for our community here to make sure that we have the right access. In fact, I was just at the National Academy of Medicine, the NAM meeting, which was looking at, the future of generative AI just 2 days ago. And one gentleman presented a very rare condition that he had in the nervous system. And he was actually a physician by himself, and he had to navigate his own diagnostic journey. And we've heard multiple presentations today about not just speeding up the diagnostic journey, but actually making clinical research part of care for patients. And I think that's all part of the equitable access, product quality, and safety. Harsha and I chat about this a lot, right? So diversity in clinical trials is paramount, and it's very important. I have some data to show you. We all talk about it. There are now agencies are putting out, for example, they want a diversity plan. So every time you go present a clinical trial, you should be presenting to them a diversity plan. So essentially, the demographic that you will recruit to your clinical trial must mirror the census of the country where you're going to be selling this drug, right? So these are all steps in the right direction, but are we there yet? Absolutely not. So if you look broadly across clinical trials, do we always mirror the census? And I have some data to show you, and there is a call for action here. Since this is an Indo-US forum, I wanted to highlight one of the rare diseases which disproportionately affects people in India. So sickle cell disease, which is an autosomal genetic recessive disorder. And you see some of the U.S. incidence rates here, but India has a high prevalence of sickle cell disease, and especially the middle part of India, and then also southern part of India, there is a high prevalence of patients with sickle cell disorders. So this kind of a situation really provides a unique opportunity for us to engage with this population, not only from a clinical trial standpoint, but also in terms of, scientific and clinical research. For large biopharmaceutical companies, they're looking for, how do we enrich the patient population for these types of rare diseases? And I think this is a great opportunity to engage with populations in India. We do have a sickle cell portfolio, and I've shown some of the assets which are in phase 1 all the way through to phase 3. But there is definitely more to come, and this was just one example where the population in India makes a perfect sense in terms of a partnership. So wanted to just quickly touch on clinical trial diversity. So this was the COVID-19, the Comirnaty trial, right? So this is the vaccine trial where 46,000 participants were enrolled. I think some of us were actually drawing lessons from the pandemic. I think what the pandemic has done has showcased how we can do things better, faster, and more efficient ways, which I think we can take forward. This was one of those classic examples where the vaccine was brought to market within a span of 7 months, and patients were recruited across these different countries. And here is some data on, this is the vaccine trial, but if we look across the 5 different therapy areas that we focus on, there's a huge emphasis on increasing diversity in our patient population. And this was actually published by Melinda Rotas and team in Contemporary Clinical Trials a couple of years ago. And you see here, the gray bar shows the census in the country, and then the blue bar indicates Pfizer-sponsored clinical trials. And you see that there is very close mirroring of the census in majority of trials, but not in all cases. For example, older population, and this could just be a reflection of, for example, if we look at severe COVID, it mostly afflicted patients who are older than 65. So, just by the nature of the disease, or maybe even some of the oncology trials, there's more recruitment in patients who are 65 plus. But I think we're making progress, and the diversity plan that the agencies require are a good nudge in the right direction. So I want to switch a little bit to this patient engagement. I think we heard some presentations today about, I think it's a joint effort between the clinical research teams, the clinical care teams, and the patients to really make this happen, especially for the rare disease community. So let me show you a couple of examples of how we are approaching this. And I want to talk to you about what my team focuses on at Pfizer. Our team is we look at what are the opportunities to do things differently using artificial intelligence or machine learning or these digital tools. And here is a little bit of background. The Food and Drug Administration put out an action plan for AI/ML in 2021, and they published in 2023 a number of apps that were medical devices that actually went through the regulatory approval. But just in May of this year, the FDA has put out an AI/ML discussion paper, which specifically goes through guidelines for how organizations like ours, or also multiple research organizations and others, should be looking at applying AI/ML to clinical research. So those are all good references and guidelines. But as we move forward, we think about how do we practice responsible AI, right? So, ChatGPT, anyone? How many of you use ChatGPT? Oh, there you go. Me included, right? And there is all these talks and discussions about bias and hallucination. With few million parameters, it's able to summarize text for us. With few more million parameters, it's able to answer questions for us. With billions of parameters, it can now look at both images and text. So where are we really heading with this, right? So the regulation and the compliance needs to catch up with the technology, and we need to set the bar really high for utilizing generative AI and other classical artificial intelligence in clinical research, especially when we're talking about impacting patients' lives. So I wanted to share with you a couple of examples. This one is atopic dermatitis. So how we did things before is sort of take a snapshot of symptoms. There's frequent on-site visits, subjective data, there's recall bias. But what we're switching to is much more patient-centric monitoring, right? So this, we want to reduce patients' burden. We want to reduce on-site visits. We want to do longitudinal data collection. And so you could wear a simple watch that we can monitor the scratch and sleep of an individual. So atopic dermatitis, extremely painful, irritating condition where patients are scratching their body constantly and they're not able to sleep, right? So essentially you want to monitor not just if the lesion is reducing, but you also want to monitor whether their scratching has reduced and if they're improving their sleep. So you can do all three of these using a very simple device that the patients can wear, and we've published these algorithms. Here is a second example of measuring gait in patients with, for example, Duchenne muscular dystrophy. So in DMD, the 95th stride velocity has just now been approved as a primary endpoint by the EMA, right? So to have a digital biomarker, something that measures longitudinally at home, so for all of you clinical trialists in the room, to have a digital biomarker that we can simply measure at home and for it to be a primary endpoint is really revolutionary, right? So if you think about it, you don't need the patients to come into a center, you don't need to do all kinds of complicated measuring. It doesn't happen for all disease areas, but something simple like gait monitoring. And so here is, we have some data where we showed that you could, using this longitudinal data collection at home, it's a very simple lumbar device, it's very tiny, and kids love wearing it. It's, they feel like, so you can see this little kid wearing it, you barely see it. And you can monitor the gait and the physical movement, and you can tell the difference between the slow walk, the fast walk, and how it actually differs between patients with different age groups, right? So if you do this snapshot monitoring, you cannot decipher this level of detail in gait, and we're now trying this in achondroplasia, which is one of the rare conditions, and applying that same lumbar-based device to routinely monitor patients and to see how they compare to the healthy individuals. So I just wanted to kind of present some of these ideas as we look out into innovative approaches to collect data from participants. During the break, I had a couple of conversations with folks about, we have all this data, there's multimodal data, there's image, there's voice, there's text from clinical trials. How do we integrate them? How do we derive most value out of it? I think a lot of those guidelines and standardization are emerging, but if you want to build AI ML models, you need to first fix the data, right? So I think for us, the data is really the elephant in the room. And if we can systematize those processes and have a concerted effort, I think that's going to help the whole community. So let me stop there. Thank you very much, Harsha. Looking forward to the panel discussion.